Don't spend too much money on branded content if you have no sort of plan to use it elsewhere. Just like don't spend too much money on ads that you're not proud to post other places.
Welcome to the Digital Advantage by Binder, a show by marketers for marketers who want to create engaging content experiences to differentiate their brand from the competition. In each episode, a member of the Binder team will host a conversation with a leading marketing expert to discuss trends, challenges, solutions, and how to remain competitive in an uncertain economic landscape. Our guests will share stories that showcase innovative ways of using content to inspire marketing leaders to take action, optimize their content strategies, and ultimately achieve the success they seek. Let's jump right in.
Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I don't think there's anyone that has a good evening, but maybe if you're taking an early nap, then good evening to you. This is the Digital Advantage. My name is Dennis Wright. I'm on the marketing team at Binder, based out of Boston. The Digital Advantage is a new podcast that's been set up by my company, Binder. We are the leading digital asset management platform here to help brand marketers out there conquer the chaos of growing content, touch points, and relationships. And really the name of the game is content, how you're creating content, managing it, and distributing it to create some really great and strong content experiences. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So today's topic is the state of omnichannel, how to use content to grow your brand. So we're really excited to have Ari Murray here. Ari is the VP of Growth at Sharma Brands, as well as the host of the Go to Millions podcast. If you haven't subscribed to that, highly recommend it. Really great place to kind of hear how D2C leaders are, highlighting the go-to-market strategy. Probably much more efficient way to get to $1 million than how I do it, which is, go to the lottery every couple of weeks. But really great content there, as well as create a work week. But enough about me talking about Ari. Let's let Ari talk about Ari. If you want to do an intro of yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. This is so fun. I do hope it's nighttime for someone listening, or at least nap time. That sounds nice. I'm Ari. I'm really grateful to be here. By day, I'm a VP of Growth at an e-commerce agency. And by night and weekend, I work on Go to Millions, which is my love letter to e-com. So e-com always, but super excited to talk all things content and growth and all the things that anyone wants to hear who's listening.
Awesome. So before we get into some really great questions that we have queued up here, Ari, have you always been, someone that's been on the e-commerce side? Did you, is this kind of what you were looking at when you were growing up and saw as your career path?
No, I didn't know what e-com was. I luckily always loved to online shop and to shop in person back in the day because I'm old, but I always wanted to be a lawyer, and I went to law school for exactly one semester. That was a long semester. I did not like it at all. And I had sort of a big crisis at age 22 because I had wanted to be a lawyer. My major in college was religious studies because it was great to get straight A's. And then once you kind of realize you don't want to be a lawyer, but you have straight A's and you have no idea what to do with your life, options are small. And so I found my older sister, luckily, had joined a big startup in LA she was like a director of marketing there. And her life looked really fun. And I didn't know much about marketing, but I knew that I wanted that life instead of my lawyer life. And so I just applied everywhere, and I became an e-commerce customer service agent at an e-commerce and B2B company called Snack Nation. And the rest is so history, but very much lucky that it didn't work out.
Well, we're glad you're here. We're glad you made the jump. Even law firms needs good marketing. So we're glad to have you here. So, what we're going to talk about today is, all the aspects. I think particularly we're going to talk about, just as a preview, really on, some of the optimization of content, how, how top brands out there are currently measuring it, how other brands are even tying it back to, revenue metrics, be able to tie the actual value. I think right now, as many people on this call are probably feeling it, especially with 2023, how it's happened so far, there is definitely a higher emphasis. Either you've had stalled budgets, cut budgets, even if it's grown, right, there's a huger emphasis on making sure that the content is driving the right business metrics. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But one thing we're going to start out with is, Binder just recently released a state of content. We surveyed over 1,200 marketers, senior level out there globally. And one of the interesting metrics that we had is, at the beginning of the year, over 69% of marketing leaders, so those in a director level or above, are planning to invest the same or more in content in 2023, even despite some of the economic tailwinds that were happening in late 2022. Love to hear from you, Ari. Like, why do you think that is? Why, even with everything going on, marketing leaders are doubling down on investing in content.
Well, the best way to grow is not to shut off the channels and the things that worked when you needed to grow back then too. And you have growth goals or metrics or revenue numbers or whatever you're trying to hit. But if you cut off the lifeblood of your marketing, which is the content and the thing that makes your brand worth looking at and stopping for and then buying, then you can spend that budget where you can spend that budget in paid to show ads to people, but the ads have bad content and there's not enough testing budget and there's not enough budget in the actual creative. And I'd rather spend more of my budget on better content and then hope that I'll get better distribution by making something worth seeing. And I would rather take budget from truly anywhere if you can protect my content budget. So there's just nothing that will help you by cutting on the one thing that like forever works, which is being interesting.
Yeah. And, I think even before this, we were talking about, a lot of brands out there, are really pushing into this approach of, continuing to build that awareness, not only through the online channels, which, from 2020 on has really become at the forefront of that called the digital shelf. Like, this is where a bulk of your customers are coming to, but then also a lot of these offline activations. But at the end of the day, though, as you mentioned, like measuring A/B testing, is a huge key of that to make sure you're being efficient with the spend. I'd love to hear just from your recent experience with some of your clients or maybe, other brands that you've consulted with, how are they approaching that experimentation path and, any tips or tricks on how that's been working for them so far?
Most of my brands are scale brands or launching, like this is their first day in market, but they have big budget or a big celebrity behind them. So there's big dreams for the brand. So we're playing with bigger budgets, but that also means bigger pressure. And across the board, minimum 20% of our budget, at least that we're deploying on paid, so Meta and TikTok and wherever else we would deploy, has to go into testing each week, because otherwise you don't know if what you're doing is the most effective. And there's probably a dollar to squeeze in every part of your business if you like have the bravery to try to squeeze it. So 20% of our budget normally goes to testing. And then in general, for measuring results, we look at a lot of things. We look at conversion rate, CTR, like LTV, to see who comes back and who we're getting, and even just the caliber of the person who's coming in. If they're buying the product we want them to buy, if they are telling a friend, if they're referring a friend. So no matter what, though, if we can't get them in the beginning, so with like the content or with the copy or all of it together, then we are at a loss. So a big part of it goes into testing and then all the metrics you'd expect. But we can't know if we're doing it as crazy or as perfectly as we could unless we spend that money.
Yeah, that's fair enough. You had mentioned, some of the, the word of mouth, when it comes to building a brand and everything. I think we've seen some really cool brands have been able to really harness that community, or, you can call it user-generated content, just letting their own customers tell their story. For some of those channels, which are a little bit more offline, a little bit outside of like the basics, being able to see if an ad's being viewed and all that stuff. Like, curious how you've been working with brands to help measure that performance or be able to kind of give them some guidance on how to really maximize that more offline lever of the, the content experience.
I think there's always an element of you can't see what you can't see. And I personally am so fine with that. I care mostly if in general, I'm hitting the goals we need to hit for the brand. If we're at not just the right like profit and revenue top line, but if we are growing the amount of orders we need each month, and if the little details that actually show like this brand has legs. And I assume there's a lot of group chatting and friends going to friends' houses, seeing the product and being told about it. And that is so fine. And we would rather be a brand worth talking about and worth discovering organically. And I think the way to make sure you're measuring that is to assume that, let's say I go to your house and I am staying with you and I'm like, washing my hands. What soap am I using? Let's say it's a soap brand that you just discovered that you love. the first thing I'll do is probably ask you to link me to it. And so then you will go back to your orders and find the link, or you'll tell me, oh, it's on Instagram. This is the handle. And then what is there to greet you when it's organic? And then it's, okay, Instagram, how many followers do you have? Is anyone cool following us? Is the link we take from Instagram that clicks them out, what can we see there? And how are they first coming into our like actual attributable places? And I think it's trying to control less of what happens before that first click and more of when you can try to get them to find you interesting enough to take that click. So I think organic and those channels, they normally lead to someone either searching for you or going straight to your social and making sure that you have everything set up to kind of know exactly who they are from that moment. And I'm personally super okay to not know every detail of how someone found me, but I also love exit intent surveys. I love to, if someone writes in and says, I love the brand and they're nice to our CX team, the CX team to ask back, how'd you find us? Or like, why, like, why'd you start with this product or anything we should change? Like, I think it's not always, you know, possible to know everything, but you can ask the questions at every time.
No, 100% agree. And before we jump into my next thought, just as a reminder, we have open Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, let's go through it. Please drop them in. We'll have about 10 minutes at the end for Ari to answer any questions. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, even on the B2B side, you know, we definitely have been engaging a lot more in those, you know, questions like, how did you hear about us? Even if we know that their last touch was coming through a paid ad from Google or maybe came through social, like we still want to ask. And it's really been insightful in understanding like where people saw us, whether it was, you know, a review site or somewhere else that maybe doesn't get picked up in that click path, you know, but especially I'm assuming, you know, from the agency side, right? You know, you're there to help but tell a brand story, you know, while you think about the click paths, you know, the message, you know, it's really, you know, making sure that the content that's being consumed at the first time is, you know, it's nailing that message. I think a good example is Liquid Death, which is, you know, for all intents and purposes, the brand that sounds like it's another alcohol brand, but, you know, for them who've popped up, I think, you know, a few years ago, you know, I was right at Boston Calling and, you know, as the only water available, you have people walking around with the brand. I overheard many conversations talking about it. You know, it's just mountain spring water. It's delicious. And you need it a hot day walking around a festival. But when you go through their social media profiles, which is what a lot of people write, they're on their mobile phones, most likely they're going to go to the Instagram profile first. Like it's set up to look exactly like what you're doing right now. A lot of different, you know, scenes of people at festivals or at, you know, outdoor events, you know, people just like yourself that you're watching, you know, seeing that. And I think that creates a good offline to online conversion, you know, and you may not go buy a 6-pack of Liquid Death the next day at a Walmart, but, you know, now it's top of mind. You're going to see some of those advertisements come through. And, you know, if you're someone who, you know, attends sort of events, like, you know, that's kind of where that brand awareness gets made and you can get some, you know, get some data out of that. But I think the biggest part is just being able to, you know, make that good experience.
Liquid Death also content wise, I've bought their merch in the fall in October. They did a collab with Martha Stewart where she was basically like killing something on camera. Like, I don't remember what it was. It was like she was cooking and she was brutal. It was perfectly within their brand. And it all led to a Liquid Death Martha Stewart candle collab where it's basically like really Halloween and spooky. And I went and bought it and it was only sold on marthastewart.com. So again, like Liquid Death probably doesn't own that customer, but they did it in the name of content. And who doesn't want their favorite brand that they would buy at a festival or at Amazon or wherever they're going to buy that water? Who doesn't want to see them partner with a beloved hero like Martha Stewart, do something really crazy, have her be in their brand and like in their way of speaking? And they're not really selling anything except for this candle that has nothing to do with either of them. And it's just in the name of content. And it's all organic. They don't even need to run ads to that product because I don't think they even care how many they sell. I bought one, so I don't know how many other people fell for it. And I'm also so scared to light it because I think it's so funny that I just had it sitting out as a candle that I don't ever burn. But I think it has to do with like being interesting enough when you can to like take those risks and swings and not always sell yourself.
Yeah. That's a great one. I 100%. I just wrote this down. I'm going to go look for these candles afterwards. Hopefully it's still up.
No, I'm sure they'll bring it back. I don't know how many they sold, but I felt pride.
quite, as we're talking about some of like, those channels such as like influencers, another stat from our state of content survey is, when we surveyed, over 66% of marketers are delivering to over 11 channels, that can be online, offline. And, one of those channels is through, either your own user base or through your influencers, micro, macro, all that. I think for those in the audience, I'm sure, there's a lot of different size brands and size budgets out there, and I think there's a huge push right now to create that authentic type of storytelling through your own customers and through your own people. I mean, and you have people such as, companies such as like Patagonia, who's historically been great at that, right? They have, their Patagonia wears, send photos to them. They use that within their content. I think there's that famous photo of that couple throwing their baby in the Patagonia gear, like across the chasm. You still see them use it today. I think when you're talking about asset reuse, I think that's 20 years running that I've seen that image out there, and you've gotten, brands with maybe little to no budget, but they're still using their people. Like, I think even if you get into nonprofit worlds, we've seen some, smaller brands or, even like county governments, like showcasing like, citywide festivals or like county fairs, but they're using content there to kind of, drive on a tourism or like, engage with their people. Again, there's this whole idea of making sure, if you're showing, let's say, kids at the fair, making sure that that's on brand and compliance, but still being pushed out to your channels in that way. And then on the other side, you have brands such as, a lot of beauty brands like Kim Kardashian, West Beauty, and I'm sure Ari, you've seen a lot more, leveraging their influencers or others out there. And again, that's also content that, there is definitely some difficulty in being able to manage that and make sure that it stays on brand and your message is consistent all the way through. Curious, from your side, what you've seen on that with your clients and, what the, some of the guidance is, for those that want to make inroads into, that side of a channel.
I think UGC is the future, and I think it's the now and it's the past. Like Patagonia did it first. And I genuinely don't buy from even the coolest, sickest animated ad. I can't. And if you tell me, and if you're someone that I look up to and you tell me to buy this lipstick, I will buy it. And it doesn't matter to me if it says sponsored. It doesn't matter to me if you say like I bought it with my own money. It matters to me what it looks like on you. And as long as I'm able to see the product in use and hear like, yes, this was good. And then in the comments of whenever it's posted, if someone's like, oh, I love this, or I am obsessed with Fenty, or this highlighter changed my life, or whatever they say, if I can see the real like proof of normal people like me who want to buy it too, then that's all I need. And it works every time. I also think UGC as a style of ad works incredibly well. And I film a lot of UGC on behalf of my clients, and it'll be me, like, let's say I have an alcohol brand, they're a wine brand, it's boxed wine, it's really elevated and cool. I am just a normal girl and I don't, I'm not a model, I'm not an influencer, and I just will give my real opinion on the brand, and then we'll whitelist that opinion from my own handle. And it works every time because it's so much cooler to see a product in use, unfiltered, and the perfect person isn't using it, but the product then can elevate their life. And I think UGC is everything. And when you have UGC, the best way to use it is to let it be actually as organic as possible and as low definition as possible. There's nothing worse than even an influencer partnership that you paid for, than scripting your ad for that person and giving them, a million requirements and making them show it in 45 different ways. And then the person who you've paid to work on your product can't be themselves, and then they act weird. And if they act weird, then what you've just paid for is potentially ruined. And so I think UGC also comes down to the brief. And the brief should be like, don't, obviously show the product in a bad way. Don't do anything that's brand offensive or against like our ethos, but please do be yourself. And like, I normally shoot my UGC in one take, and so does everyone on our team, because at some point, even people who do this as a job, or for influencers who film 6 ads a day, if you give them a script and they have to memorize something, how hard is that to do with like your normal face and with your normal sounded voice? And I think when you can keep UGC as like this moment in time, like that Patagonia ad where you can tell like, it's not like a professional photographer was on set shooting for them. It was just a normal picture and it hasn't been color corrected and it's just normal. And that's what people really want to see. and it works really well.
Awesome. I'd love to hear from the audience. Make sure to throw a thumbs up or a smiley face emoji if you're leveraging UGC in your current content strategy or you're looking to do it this year. My expectation, especially with summer ramping up, we'll kind of see a huge influx to some of that, through the different social channels. And make a good point, in the authentic lens, doing it in the first try. I think I've definitely, myself personally, when I go through Instagram feeds, for example, I think the ones that really resonate the most are those that do it vertical, which means they are doing it right in the moment. When you see horizontal, it usually means it's production or you're setting it up. Like there is that value in being able to, hey, well, from a UI standpoint, just being able to quickly scroll and have it full there. But then I think also there is that you can see that, you hear the ums and the ahs and it's authentic. They're for all intents and purposes shooting off the cuff, but they're authentic to the brand, which should convey that the brand that that's trying to engage with you understands where you are. I think we've talked about this even before this. It's like really getting to where your customers are and not making them come to you, and really be able to showcase that piece. Again, what the theme so far is like your content needs to really showcase what you would look like in their shoes, and not force the product itself. One thing that it's a little bit tangent or adjacent with this idea of generating your own content is also making sure that you're reusing it. Every single CMO that was surveyed in the state of content expressed the desire that they need to reuse their content more often. I think I've had some great conversations with some of the Binder customers in the last few months. We had a really large financial services company that admitted that even no less than 2 years ago, that they have hundreds of thousands of assets being pushed to like all the different branches, through their social channels, all that. They were only reusing 20% of those assets. 80% were first time come and go and never, used again, even though it was purchased or, acquired through, some sort of marketplace to, use, which again, in the area of efficiency, right, that really goes against, what brands need to do. For you, like, do you have any advice that you can give, brands out there that are, looking to repurpose kind of for different channels? Like what's been your experience on that side?
I mean, I think it's so underrated, and it's also so easy, which makes it so sad that it's so underrated. But if you shot ads in October that are cyclical for Halloween time or for whatever has to do with your product in the fall, in the next fall, why are we shooting completely net new ads? I understand always mixing it up and keeping it fresh and trying new things, but I like to look at what I already have, and I would look at what I already have like latest in the summer before I even plan my October shoot, and look at the metrics behind the content that we ran last year and see what performed, what people actually reacted to. And then how can we go make a little bit more of that and maybe take one big swing that's super different than everything we shot before. But the intention should always be to rerun your winners and to use your old paid ads on organic, to use your organic on paid ads, to use your best email GIF on social. Like, why would you reinvent everything? And also, it's at some point not very cohesive or consistent. If I look at a brand and every 2 weeks, it's like a whole new world. That is inspiring in a way, because I know that that is artistic and cool and they're fresh, but it's also a little confusing because what if I don't resonate with how I first found the brand? Maybe they were one way and now they have a new vision and it's a whole new way of showing themselves, and it's been 2 weeks and I'm not ready. And I think that we try so hard to be cool and fresh, and every marketing team is sent like ads that someone found that they think are so cool. And then that doesn't always mean you have to go plan an expensive photo shoot and try something completely not new. It's also, how can you take a piece of creative that worked for you before and change the overlay copy on it? Even just change the ad copy and change nothing on the asset. Maybe change the way you're showing it. Maybe it was a 6-second GIF. Why not a 4-second GIF? Like, why can't we change the hook? All those little changes are things that can be done on the editing floor and don't have to be done in front of a camera. And anything that worked before, it probably will work again if you give it a shot. It might not, but it definitely won't if you just throw it away. And I think too, people think that ads are creative fatigues, but often there's something going on in the world, like in the macro environment, that could lead to that ad not winning for you right now. Like, I have a brand that for Mother's Day didn't run a Mother's Day promotion, which is so fine. It wasn't in the plan. They had a big Memorial Day, but then they were freaking out because their ads weren't doing as well over Mother's Day weekend. But over Mother's Day weekend, everything's more expensive because everyone who has a Mother's Day promotion is going really hard and everyone's shopping for that moment. And so you have to also take a look at sometimes it's not the creative's fault and to maybe sure like throttle spend down, but that doesn't mean that that ad should be thrown away or that like Instagram post that didn't get a ton of likes could totally still be like an SMS asset.
Awesome. Actually, we just got a question in that I think is a great fit to tie back into some of the the conversation around UGC. Are any good tips to reuse or repurpose user generated content, or are those more of a one and done approach? Have you had to deal with that kind of conversation before?
I think more is more, especially if you can get the rights to that content and even the raw file. I think, let's say I shot an ad for you as UGC and it was 30 seconds and your editing team in that deal was able to get the right. They should take that raw footage and cut it up into 15 seconds and then change the hook and then change the ad copy. And then on the actual UGC where it's a customer who's just a fan who's posting it, I think that that asset can be used on email, it can be used on SMS, it can be used even on Twitter when you're the founder talking about the brand and saying like, this ad made my day, or like this customer made my day, thank you so much, and tagging them and showing that real people love your brand. That same photo could be used on your homepage as like the review that you're pairing with that beloved customer. Why can't you show that same photo? And I think as long as you have the usage rights, and often for like a real loyal organic customer, the usage right just is like, this made my day, thank you for this photo. Do you mind if we post it and use it to help find like other people that we can help? I'd love to give you $100 like to shop the store and give them a gift card. And that could be like usage for perpetuity. And all you had to do was like make that customer's day. And I think it's so underrated. And that same customer can help you for years to come if you let them.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think I've definitely seen a lot of great relationships in, getting value from both sides, right? You have a loyal customer that, continues to buy and they find, value and joy in your product. And then from the company standpoint, you want to kind of, prolong the customer lifetime value out of that one. So definitely have seen that validated through a lot of brands. Keep another UGC question. When it comes to that mix between, that more authentic UGC versus like the brand's original content, how do you have a sense of like a right mix? Does it kind of depend on, what their go-to-market strategy is, or is it really kind of like a 50-50 split?
It's super big mix and there's not an exact number. The only number that's wrong is 100% branded content. And everything else, I assume UGC will take a big chunk, but UGC can also be a customer quote that you turn into an ad. And there's a lot of ways to take organic moments and make them feel on brand, or to slice them up and pair them with other assets or animations that you might produce and make really cool and crazy and thumb stopping. But in general, the only wrong answer is like, we like to control our narrative. Or even UGC that is only one aesthetic or one look. You should assume if you're only showing blonde people in your ads that maybe blonde people are the only people that will buy your product. And so how can you like break your own kind of aesthetic rules or preferences and just go for like, who do you want to buy this product? And normally the answer is a lot of people. So you should show a lot of different people. And that doesn't mean like 4 different models. It means hundreds of people who can help your brand and who like actually can show it in a real way. And that can be mixed in with your more like on brand, really well thought out creative ads and organic content too. But I like to see real people, and that's normally how I buy. So if you don't show real people, then I'm probably not going to buy your brand.
Yeah, that's fair. So I guess the next question in that regard is, how do you actually, can you balance the brand consistency of, with that originality? Do you see that bit of, friction between the two, or, is it more of just, making sure that you're picking the right, brand voices out there that fits within the message? Or you kind of allow a little bit of that freedom in order to make sure it looks authentic?
I'm a big proponent of the freedom. And I think obviously, like, you can't have someone saying something crazy about your brand. And you do want to make sure they're educated on the product and that they're saying your brand name right. And that, they're not, if you're selling collagen, they can't say it does something it doesn't do. We don't need to get sued. But outside of that, I think it should be a whole mix. I think people should be able to be funny or serious or in a really beautiful environment or just in their normal house. Like, I think everyone should be able to do what they want. And when you tell someone, like, we need you to do these 14 things, you're basically saying, no matter how you would have done this, you have to do it this way. But we can only like think of so many cool ideas every day. But if you have someone who's never shopped for you before, and if you just let them go and do their thing, what if they have just the most creative mind and you've just made them do something really vanilla? So I think there's an on-brand way to do almost anything, and you should get out of your own way as a rule. And you can always choose how to post something and how to say, like, maybe not everything is meant to be a paid ad. Even if you thought it would be, maybe it's better on organic or on a customer page or whatever it might be. But I think you should show the real life of your product, and that's not too overproduced.
Fair enough. Cool. I think we have a few more questions that are coming through, so I want to make sure we have enough time for that. But, kind of just to wrap up on this conversation, we want to look a little forward facing, right? We want to hit a lot of the summer campaigns and right back back to school campaigns. And then, you got the holidays at the tail end of the year. It's never a quiet time in the world of marketing and advertising.
No.
So I'm curious, Ari, is there a specific channel that you've definitely been high on so far this year that you expect to see, double down on over the coming months in particular?
I mean, Meta, as much as we all hate it and it's like big of a little mess up they had last month, I've never had a brand make it who can't make it on Meta. And that should be home base. And that's really where you should find your efficiency. And then you have to use your paid social and you have to power it with paid search, because you can't assume that always on first click, someone's going to go and convert for you. And so when they come back to you, what will they find? So the Meta Google 1-2 punch of like Instagram stories and Instagram, just static post and feed, mixed with like an actual really thought out search campaign works every time. And I think that even Facebook, I have some brands that think they might be too cool for Facebook, or, our customer is younger, or we don't even go on Facebook. We don't need to run Facebook ads, but that normally will surprise you. And so I, in general, think the Instagram, Facebook split, and to let the content place itself and to see the results back, but to not assume that we're really expensive, cool skincare. We're based in, a major city. We don't need to be on Facebook. You'd be surprised who's on Facebook. And people on Facebook might be a little older, so they might have more money, so they might buy. And so I like all customers and I will go find you. So Meta, but Facebook, Instagram as a mix with Google to support that search volume.
Awesome. Yeah, and I 100% agree. I think there's a lot of, when you're selling across the board, there's always going to be those pockets of your audience through those different channels. And if you, and if you're listening to advice from people like Ari and know, where to, optimize that and be able to reuse in the right places, like, it's definitely a channel that I think right now feels a bit undervalued, but still has a lot of firepower in 2023. So, anything specific that you are looking forward to from your clients that you're able to, share with the audience in the next few months?
I think a lot of my brands, especially my alcohol brands, have been waiting for summer. And I think that every sort of big category is cyclical. And I mean, there's some like evergreen always on, and some brands are waiting for that Q4 monster. But any of my brands that are more lifestyle or lived in the real world, like alcohol or makeup, beauty, like, summer is really the time to shine. It's also when a lot of other brands that might be more serious or cookware or just not as primed for a fun summer, they will struggle. And so I have an alcohol brand that is that box wine brand that I'm really excited about. They just launched this year, and we're making the coolest ads. There's gifts where it's just the beach and the product and it's just the real ocean waves behind it with like one little button at the end. That works really well. And I think it's just how can we show our product like having fun with you this summer versus running some of the old content that might have been shot in the winter. And I also just as a rule, the one thing and the one time I won't reuse content is if it's fall, I don't need to show like photos of the beach. And if it's winter, I don't need to show photos of the fall. Like I think you have to be aware of where you are in the year. And I think it's the summer of fun. So any brand, no matter what you're selling, like how can you be easygoing in your content this summer? But I'm excited. It's like I feel like people have been waiting. Memorial Day's over. Everyone's just it's June 1st. Happy June. I know it's not summer, but it feels like it. And so I think content has to support that.
I think I saw maybe 5 sunscreen ads in the last 24 hours. So I know if there's one industry that's ready to go, it's definitely sunscreen, which fun fact is I looked it up. It's over a $6 billion industry.
I have a sunscreen brand that I work for, and we started to run the craziest ads in March because you can get to be someone's new sunscreen of choice in March, then that's so much easier than now when everyone's going crazy. So being early also works really well. But sunscreen it's a little great industry over there.
Yeah. Cool. So I've got a few more minutes, so I'm going to go through some of these questions. First, Ari, what are your thoughts on Pinterest content marketing?
I have a love-hate relationship with Pinterest. I think it's great for brand affinity and for people organically finding you. I haven't had Pinterest ads be a channel that I can rely on or like devote a lot of my budget to, but where brands can be organically active and really like assign someone to post daily or more than once a day, that I think is where Pinterest should sit as a general rule minimum. And then to experiment with what type of content is being saved down and pinned and going like viral within the channel and use that to help guide the aesthetic of other ad creative or other organic channels. And obviously like test Pinterest as an organic or as a paid channel. But I think Pinterest should exist as something not to be neglected, but not something to always count on for every type of brand. At least for my brands, we haven't really cracked the code, but we do make sure it's managed and organic and cool and that we don't just leave it there or worse, not participate.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. This is a good question. So when you're working with, brands, especially those that, requiring, that has the marketing leadership involved, again, you're dealing with, 7-figure, advertising budgets in some cases. How do you convince the marketing leadership team on the value of content that's solely for brand building when content that's more down funnel, right? Those that are more for conversion purposes it's much more easy to measure, particularly right now when, again, a lot of spend is being scrutinized. So I'm curious, how do you kind of make the business case on investing more in the brand building content?
I think you don't know what will be brand building until you make it. And I think you can't assume that this piece of creative is only for this exact placement at this exact time. And I think it's about making sure that there's a plenty of content and that everything is just always shot with how can we get our message across and how can we show the brand. We make some ads that we call them brand hype videos, and they're basically just really fast-paced animations with cool music and flashing screens, and they're showing the brand, not just like the product, but also mixing in UGC, also going back to like, these are our 3 value props and this is an offer at the end. And sometimes we cut that with no offer at the end and it's posted on social to show like the new product dropping or whatever it might be. And that might be sort of non-down funnel, but it's still really cool to watch. And so I think you can assume that anything that's branded could be interesting enough to one day convert someone, and anything that's an ad could be beautiful or cool enough to one day convert someone too. And so to just make a lot of everything, but don't spend too much money on branded content if you have no sort of plan to use it elsewhere. Just like don't spend too much money on ads that you're not proud to post other places too.
Gotcha. 2 more questions. How do you feel about blog posts within a brand's content strategy?
I feel great about it. I think that those blog posts live on your website and can rank, and for SEO, there's really no reason not to. I think using ChatGPT to help you on those blog posts, if you have a small team, also works well, and to help you with your keyword research and then to work that into your content. But I think every email can start as a blog post and every blog post can become an email, and that it doesn't take that much work to make a lot of content, especially if you don't try to make it perfect. And if you trust people on your team to write it, you don't need to have your most senior copywriter writing every single thing. You don't need to have your brand founder take 3 months to write like a, anniversary post on we're 1 or we're 4 or whatever age the brand is turning. I think blog posts, the same for ads, the same for everything. They're meant to feel like someone wrote them, like a real person wrote them to you. And that doesn't happen if it takes that person like 6 edit rounds and 5 people to approve it. Often it's just like, this is great or not, but we feel like we need to ship this. And if it's not going to break any rules, at least let it rank. So I feel like you can't ignore it, especially if you want to like think about your website for the long term.
You make a good point, again, another way of reusing your content, right? An email and a blog post, an email sits in your inbox and can get buried, but if you're able to if you know how to repurpose that within the blog, that's always live, and a way to keep bringing that back up to the fold and continue to be able to drive the value that's from that written copy. I also love it took us 42 minutes before we brought up the subject of AI and ChatGPT. So, one major topic that we somehow avoided talking about. I'm sure we could spend an entire other episode on that, but we'll leave that for later. So with a couple minutes left, I'll leave you with this final question. When you're looking, any last thoughts on tips for anyone out there, no matter if they're a small brand or a large brand, on how to look at making your content more interesting and stand out right now?
I think the way to look at it is the way to be as a marketing team, which is like open-minded, and to assume that any idea has legs and it doesn't matter who it came from or what it looks like. If it stops you or if it makes someone in the room, like as you're planning it, smile. I think too, like marketing teams that have fun do good things. And if you have a culture where those types of ideas aren't really accepted, or if you think that those ideas have to come from the top or from your creative director or from someone whose title might support those ideas, I think you can only have so many interesting ideas in a day. And so the more people who can help you and to help you make all types of content and to spread all types of messages, if you're open to it, it will do better and you'll resonate with different types of people, and not to be kind of too like approval-y about it, if that's a word. Just like let it happen.
We'll make it a word, but 100% makes sense. Well, awesome. So we are at time. Ari, really appreciate you stopping by and taking some time to talk shop. I hope the audience got some good takeaways, particularly in generating some good authentic content through your people. I think the brand voice is best served by your customers. And I think we had some good conversations around the optimization side and how where and how to reuse content to the best of your abilities. So appreciate you taking the time. This is the Digital Advantage by Bynder. We are officially on Spotify, and if you have a chance, make sure to subscribe, as well as subscribe to the Go to Millions podcast by Ari. And with that, everyone enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. It was so fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Digital Advantage, brought to you by Bynder, the leading digital asset management platform. Bynder helps you conquer the chaos of growing content, touchpoints, and relationships. If you found this episode inspiring, you'll love our additional content on our social channels, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform.